Welcome to the Beyond Green 365 podcast. This podcast educates homeowners on how to make healthier choices when updating, remodeling, or building a new home. Step Beyond Green to Healthy supports, advocates, and educates for healthier indoor environments. We make every effort to offer healthier options and learning opportunities. However, our assistance is not specific medical advice for any one person and/or medical condition. For specific medical advice, please contact your physician. The content provided by Step Beyond Green to Healthy is for your information only. Any application of this information is your responsibility entirely. Here is your host, Jonathan Synovic.
Welcome, everybody, to the Beyond 365 podcast. The podcast that educates homeowners on how to make healthier choices when updating, remodeling, or building a new home. I am your host, Jonathan Synovic, excited to be here once again, and I have with me today none other than Bingo Emmons. Oh, I say that right. I said it wrong, didn't I?
That's close enough.
It's close enough, you think?
Yeah. It's Bingo Emmons.
Emmons from Creative Construction of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Welcome, Bingo.
You're not the only one. All grade school, everything is always the Emmons.
You know, and I even wrote it down twice.
That's
I said,
right.
and
That's
Emmons.
right.
All right,
you're
Mr.
normal.
Emmons.
You're normal.
I'm normal. I don't know if I'd ever consider myself normal,
But if you call me Mr. Emmons, I think you're talking to my dad.
Isn't it funny how that never gets old either?
People say, is Mr. Emmons here? No, he's not.
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, Bingo, you know what? Creative Construction of Wisconsin doesn't necessarily say exactly what you do. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, we're a plaster stucco company, masonry, tuck pointing. We're real creative in some of the things that we can do. That's why I came with the name Creative. But actually back in high school, me and my brother came up with the name Creative. Creative Construction is what we wanted to, call ourselves. My dad was, AW contractor, Wisconsin plastering. This is just a family business that just got taken over. And when I got out of college, they taught me that when I was in college, I needed to get incorporated. So we came with the name Creative Construction. Naturally, that name was taken. So we had to come up with Creative Construction of Wisconsin, Inc., and that's why the red and white looked like badgers, and just took off from there.
Kidding.
Yeah, that's our name got developed. And it was right in the middle of doing the waterfall, the rainforest at the museum, and that's why we just said I really want to get into this kind of work, doing the really, really creative stuff. So that's all part of it.
That's, you know what? Most people don't have a name for how they came up with it, or don't have a story for how they came up with their name. That's really neat. I don't think I ever knew that.
No.
That's cool. And what do you? I guess what's the primary focus? I know you're creative in a lot of ways, but when you said plaster, I don't think is plaster and stucco the same. I think when I think about my history of knowing construction, I don't know that I ever. Can you use them in the same sentence?
It happens. People will say, "I'll be plastering a house," and they say, "Oh, we got to find a stucco guy to do the outside." Plaster and stucco is the exact same trade.
Okay.
The only thing that's different is material. Exterior is cement, tissue type materials, and interior is more of a gypsum and lime. And that goes back hundreds of years. It's not like it's a brand new product.
Yeah, and I think when we think of healthy too, that's what, when we've talked in the past, I think is so amazing about that. We talk about how old it is. It actually is a fairly healthy product as well, correct?
Yes, it is. The silica is the only problem right now about it. When you have the silica, that's a sand texture that was put in there as time goes on. But like lime, farmers use lime in fields, use lime for a lot of things. The finish coat in your most old homes, 100 years old, are just lime-based products. Even the cement on the outside of a house is a lime-based cement. Before Portland was invented, it's all lime cement. It's lime cement. These are just natural products from the ground. They take it, they cook it, and then we add some water to it and they make it work.
And you think about how beautiful I've seen some of that work over the years. It's amazing it's such a simple product.
Yeah, people say, "What's your magic formula?" Well, we take sand, cement, and cement and lime. We put them together. Basically, get three products. Some water, and but we do right proportions and things that make it proper. It's different things. When you tuck pointing, it's a 6-to-1 mix, and it doesn't really mean much to you guys, but what it does is for tuck pointing, you got to use a softer mix than what they originally done. Otherwise you're tuck pointing. If you ever see people tuck point a home, and then you go back and tuck point it, and then you go and say, "Man, this looks worse now than it did before you guys tuck pointing," because it just starts to pop right back out and trap some moisture and stuff back in. So you got to make sure you always use softer products. Part of their trade secret.
Interesting. So stucco is just the exterior term used, and plaster is actually the interior term used.
What's the difference between cement and concrete?
No, I don't know the difference between cement and concrete. Is there?
It's aggregate.
Really?
It's aggregate. These are both sand, cement. Instead of just a lot more sand, they add gravel and and stones. But the products are the same.
The exact same. All right. All right. And when we think of interior plaster work, I know we've had discussions in the past. I think it's worth mentioning. So all those like fancy crowns that were in houses, I heard you tell some fascinating stories about moldings. I know a lot of homeowners out there think, oh my gosh, I've got this beautiful molding, these plaster moldings. There's no one that can actually duplicate them. That's not the case, correct?
Not only that, we still use we don't use horsehair anymore. We use wood fibers or fiberglass. That's the only thing we do different, but the same lime molding, number one molding plaster we still use, they use that same stuff today when we recast them.
So you guys could still do that, I guess is where I was getting at it.
Yeah, we do it. With insurance jobs, something happens. As long as they have a good piece of copy, I'm really good at copying stuff.
Yeah. He was. You have kind of you still do most of those.
And in the company, that's where I usually come into is do the moldings. I have a little setup the way I think I do, and I actually use part of my living room for part of it. But once I get the molds, and I just process, turn the TV on, and I can make like a mold every 45 minutes. Just push one out.
No kidding, and I get a lot of homeowners call up and say, hey, is there can you do that? And up until recently, I didn't even know there was a company in the area, and there aren't a lot of you around, right? There's only a couple companies in the Milwaukee area.
Well, Orlandini is the main one that did it, and then one of his proteges taught me how to do it when we were doing the Riverside Theater, and I just from then on I just picked up and said, I really like doing this because maybe being a construction guy, and I was way younger, it's like, man, this is way easier than climbing up and down the scaffold, smearing out a Hampton Inn or something. So I said, I kind of like this, so I volunteered to learn how to do moldings.
Okay.
Make plaques and things, and people do that, and then I got people that want it. They'll make something. It says, "Well, I want something." I said, "Well, if you make it, I can copy it because that's all we do is we make a mold, we copy it, and then we just pour a mold into it."
Can you think of any instance in which it's been your most creative mold that you didn't think, well, maybe I couldn't, but it stretched the limit?
The hardest one I had is we had to duplicate a car fender, like on the 16th floor of one of those buildings downtown. Without giving it, because of the history of it. Sure. Anyways, one company bought another company, but they want to turn a cafe into like a car fender. So it looks like a big car fender. So we had to make that out of scratch. So bend metal, steel, and then we had to plaster over it. And then they actually hired a painting, like a car guy. Yeah. And spray painted it as turquoise blue.
No kidding.
That was the hardest thing I ever did. Because
that turquoise blue, fender, huh?
Yeah, because as soon as you spray paint it, oh geez, every little blemish is showing. Okay, wait, let me touch this up a little bit. So I had to make that thing perfect. It ain't to be shiny as a car,
Got it. All right, so when we think about plaster and stucco, I think everybody comes to start thinking, well, it's just not that great a product to resist weather. But that's not really the case when you think of stucco on the exterior of some of these buildings. You had mentioned 100-year-old buildings still, standing today. But I know that I get those phone calls that's like, hey, it's cracked. This must be a failing product. Tell us a little bit about water infiltration and stucco.
Yeah, stucco was originally designed as a cheap siding to last about 125 years. But guess what? I'm really popular now because it's 125 years.
Sure.
So it was designed to do things. Now everything's brick is a lot less troublesome, less maintenance. Brick's the same way. You got to do tuck pointing, and you got to take care of it. In some of these stucco homes, you look at no one's touched them since they've been built. You can see they're getting dark, they're getting black. they're just from the soot from whenever you was burning coal. They're just dark. And then you got some people that take care of them. They got them. They paint them, they do things. And some of the problems that we've been having with these people is you put on a paint that's not breathable. And then it gets behind them. It gets behind them, and it doesn't breathe out. And then you'll see the paint's peeling and it's coming off by the sheets. And if they just wouldn't have painted it, they wouldn't have any problem at all. Because the stucco needs to breathe. It needs to breathe all the time. I'm not talking about the EFIS, the synthetic stuff. That's a whole different animal. Mm-hmm. People say, "Oh, that's stucco." I don't know. Okay, that stucco is not even the same. That's basically it's paint mixed with marble chips and quartz chips and stuff, and it's just smeared over a really thin base coat. That's different. But stucco itself, it's been around. There's places in Germany. I've been to the East Coast. You see buildings 200 years old, and you're like, that still looks pretty good. They're no one's they've been touched up a few times. It's like anything else. It has to be. You can't just put it on and just wait. It's okay. That's good forever. No, they're doing. Look at the Egyptian things out there, right? those are thousands of years old. They're doing a little cruddy, little cracks.
Yeah, well, they've been there a long time. I mean, I think you got to give them a little bit of leeway there, you know.
But you're just taking natural materials, they put them together. And because of the process, when you add water to it, it sets off a chemical reaction, and when the water dries, that's where it sets up, and it becomes that new material, and becomes its own type of rock.
So, what is a natural color? Because when you say that stucco painted is kind of where it starts to break down. I guess I've never even. Again, you're saying some amazing things, even as that got me triggered. So, what is the natural color of stucco, or do you get to put some sort of pigment in it when you do it?
Well, yeah, we put basically when you see color stucco, usually the beiges. That's basically it's got iron ore in it.
Okay.
And that's
so the beige is a normal color for stucco.
Yeah, it's iron ores, and those that's where you see a lot of beiges, a lot of white. Yeah, I mean the colors, because they're all based on iron ore type colors that are cooked or whatever they do. They make it, and then you add the powder, and you had to get an exact amount, you got to measure it. You know, like a scale or something. It's got to be just precise. You know, like a thimbleful or a shot glass full or whatever that you need for just to make the right beige. I mean, they're not a lot, but it's a little bit in every mix.
Okay.
So you got to have the exact same thing. So you get those companies who are adding by the shovels and stuff. Like when we do colored, we measure off the buckets, they're weighed, and they're they're dry, they're weighed, and everything is exactly the same. So when every batch is exactly the same. But now if you see what goes on, you buy like a spec mix, where it's someone's already did it for you.
Mm-hmm.
But back when I was growing up, we had to measure all our stuff perfectly. 6 buckets of this, and 1 bucket of lime, and then 2 buckets of cement, and then mustard jar, whatever the container was for the right exact color of iron ore that we needed.
Sure.
We had a tablespoon either way, and the color was off.
Sure.
And you've seen it. Especially go down south, you'll see where things like look. You can tell where every different batch that they had, because they're shoveling sand, and that's usually the people that shovel sands. You can always tell when you can see their joint marks, their color marks.
No kidding. So around the Milwaukee area here, I see a lot of white. Is that painted then?
Well, white stucco white, you can get stucco white. I mean,
oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Especially the old-fashioned lime cement stucco was white. It looks more whiter than almost like a tan, because the reason it has a little tan tinge to it is there's mason sand in it. But it was white cement, but with mason sand. It's not white cement, it's just lime cement, which was more of a white cement.
Okay, so that may not have been painted then. That just actually is its natural color. So anything other than in that beige category or white, more than likely it was painted?
Most likely. Most houses are painted now.
Really?
And just because of the coal in the street salt and everything that just goes around, it always makes them like kind of black. You can still see the ones that haven't been painted in 100 years, because you'll see like right underneath the eaves and everything like black where the rain can't wash it.
Okay.
And then when it gets down lower and lower, it gets down like this. And those are real common of they call them number 25 buff, was the color that they used back then to get that buff.
I love that you can just spit off the numbers like without even thinking about it.
Because when I first started playing, we didn't have the options you got now. You didn't have spec-crete mix and stuff where you can just go to a store and say, I like this color green, I want this color, I want that color. You didn't have that option. You had to literally mix the colors. We had to go to Jones Island, where the iron ore, all iron ore comes in to make the colors, and you had to tell them, I want this color. And the people at DCS were super, they were a small company back then, but they were a really nice company. You just come in the back room and say, okay, let's try this. Let's see what this. Okay, so I'll give you a small bag of this and a small bag of this and put this. So I use 1 part this, 2 parts this, and they were really good about helping us get that all figured out in the beginning.
No kidding.
Now you can just go buy a bag of cement mix, figure it out, already colored.
Sure. Okay. And what about maybe some quick maintenance things? So I own a stucco home. Let's just say I don't, but let's just say I did. What are some things now that we know that this product can last 100 years? Are there some things that I need to be looking out for that now I for sure gonna need to call an expert in, or something I could do?
You can, remember this product's been around thousands of years. And basically lime cement has been around for a long time. The Portland cement is new. That's around 1920, but when it started hitting off around here. But the old lime cement, people built their own houses, log cabins. They would make their cement, they'd teak in between the boards. I mean, they've been using cement for a long time. It's not like new. And there's really nothing. What we do is, I know every time, like I just looked at a ceiling earlier today, thing fell down in their hallway. They don't know what they're going to do. But I was like, well, it's no big deal. I'll just get, we'll plaster back up. But to me, I don't think about it.
Right.
You know, I probably like me going to mechanics. You go, oh, your transmission's not working. Yeah, give me a couple $1,000 and I'll fix it. Right? And you're like, oh, well, yeah, I don't care. I'm broken until you get it fixed. So
Right.
people get the same reaction. I get the same pride look in their face that I would get to them. That I would give to a mechanic. Like, well, I don't get it. I don't know how to do it.
I know it seems very scary, especially when you start to see the lath exposed or just that. I think it's the unknown. It doesn't seem like drywall. I mean, drywall's kind of been like the newest, we'll call it the newest thing. And so when you get into some of these older homes, I know there's a fear factor of that. You know, it's like, well, I don't know if I can repair it. I'll just rip it out. I know I tend to, you got to look at every case differently, but there's some major advantages to, redoing the wall in plaster, specifically when it gets to water, right?
Yeah, one thing about plaster is it could take way more abuse. If your drywall gets wet for over an hour, you got to remove it because you got mold. There's nothing you can do. The paper's involved, and plaster you can get away with a lot more longer. It can be wet sometimes for a couple of days. As long as you start drying it out right away, you'll be all right. It takes a long time. When people like this, oh, this leak just happened over the weekend, I look at it, it's like brown and bubbly, and it's calcimite, it's like little slate. I said, that's been leaking for years. They're like, oh no, it just happened over the weekend. I said, okay, I guess insurance claim. I was right up. Oh yeah, I saw your leak. But yeah, you gotta. There's one thing about plaster is it takes more abuse. People that own a plaster home and move to a drywall home, they actually hire us to come in there and we put a skim coat over all their drywall to make their house plaster again. They just like that. You can't. There's no such thing as having secrets in a drywall home,
right?
Because the walls are thin. So people that grew up in plaster homes, they buy a really nice big one of those mega mansions on a golf course, and they'll just hire us to put a thin coat of half-inch of plaster on all the walls, just so they get that plaster feel back that they grew up with.
So you can do that. So you can actually plaster over the drywall walls.
Yeah, there's a thin coat system that's made just for that.
Just for that
purpose.
Yeah, and you're saying that's got a higher, a better sound quality per room.
Well, sound quality, and then if you're one of those people that keep touching the walls, you'll notice the difference. Because you can't. It's like tennis courts. I made the same trowel finish, just done in an old-fashioned kitchen. It's just lime engaging. Not tennis courts, racquetball courts. That's the same thing as just lime and good.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's the same materials.
That's, it's just fascinating to me. I know. And have you done or have been asked to do new home construction?
We do once in a while. We do new homes. We usually stay out of it because there's companies out there that they're just called shanty wipers. They just go in and they just fly through them and stuff. And that's not where my thing is.
No?
My dad was a big union contractor, and it's like, like we did the Taco Bells, Budget Tells, Hampton Inns. We're just doing all that stuff. I don't like doing that.
Sure.
And people ask me, hey, why don't we do your home? And I says, I'm really not that guy. But you wanna close up a window or put up a hole or wreck something, or if you got something, or you want to make it look like it's perfect, that's when you want to call me.
Excellent. Yeah, that's always good to know. Have you heard of me? What is the technique if I were considering, especially because of the healthy front? I know it's one of the things that there's a lot of concern out there with the type of there's the Chinese drywall that came in that had all kinds of problems, and there's still a demographic of our listeners probably that are still really skeptical about drywall, and so they've asked me over the years for alternatives, and there's cement boards and there's different types of boards that are out there. However, it never really, I guess, occurred to me, is there still a full service technique for plaster inside the house?
Yeah, we plaster homes. Yeah, we use like rib lath. We don't use wood lath anymore.
Rib lath, really?
Yeah, it is. Well, rib lath it's just lath that's stiffer.
Oh.
There's regular. People go you go to like the box store and you see like metal lath, right? Well, this has like little ribs in it because you put it on, you're nailing right the boards. If you take a regular type of metal lath is real flimsy, so they got this stuff as rib lath, and it's real common. It's more like in commercials, like the basketball arenas and all that stuff. That's just done with rib lath because especially in like the Oak Creek Power Plant, they wanted the bathrooms and then the rooms, in case the ceilings blow up or whatever that rule is, their ceilings are floating, so they're all done with rib lath and just in hanging wire. So if the ceiling ever blow up, it's got some give to it.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's got a little spring, it goes wing.
Right.
Put those little things in there, little shock system in there for them. So, but that's where it's done quite a bit. You just don't hear about it much because it's still done a lot in commercial.
No kidding.
the whole Potawatomi, all those rooms and stuff, that's all plaster.
It's all plaster.
Yeah, those plastered, all those arches, all those things, that's all done by plastering.
And see, I think for a lot of us more on the residential level, because we hear so little about it nowadays, you wouldn't even thought it was a technique of the past almost, but not really.
Okay, you build a home, right? And it's not just it's more than double what it costs to drywall your home. So that's why drywall is winning. It's a matter of economics. I watch his homes. You see his home with I don't want to rip on EFS too much because I work for a couple of those companies restoring, fixing the callbacks and stuff. But that's just a very cheap siding. That's very stucco siding. And stucco to begin with was a cheap siding. Now they got the stuff with the foam on it. The problem with that system is it's only designed to last 30 years. And then people are calling me up like 25 years into it and say, hey, what do you think? And I said, I don't know. It's getting kind of the end of the life of this thing. I'm like, oh, no, stucco's supposed to last 125 years. Not this kind of stucco. This isn't stucco. This is basically paint, smeared over foam.
Yeah, I guess for everybody listening, can you explain a little bit about what EFS is? Because I think you hear that a lot with stucco and EFS, but they're like you're saying, they're two completely different products.
Yeah, EFS, if it's done correctly, it lasts a long time. I have jobs that my dad has jobs that done in the 70s, and they look fine. They got to pay them every 14 years or 15 years, whatever my dad says, and then and those things just fine. But a lot of those things were done, especially up into the early 90s. They were so airtight, they rotted from the inside out. The substrates, they trapped moisture in, and they didn't breathe them properly. It's done now. The way they're doing EFS is differently. They got drainage systems to them, but even and today's standards, and the absolute truth about the problem with EFS is you take the best companies around and try to do EFS perfectly, they're still going to get something wrong. It's that difficult, but the people that are doing it are the lowest bidders, building with people that aren't actually plastering contractors. They're just something else, and they just smear it on there and they rub it on the foam, and you say it looks good, and then 6 years later we're taking it off and replacing it.
Yeah, I would definitely say we don't see do you see many applications? I guess I shouldn't say. I should ask the expert. Do you see many applications with EFS in residential though?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah. I'm looking at I look at EFS for a lot of home inspectors right now because of all the problems it has and history of the problems it has. The truth is in 1992 or 1991, I think we quit doing it. We just quit.
Yeah, because the insurance companies quit insuring
doing
it, right?
Insurance companies just say, hey, you guys might want to back off on this. And we said, okay, no problem. And it's like, oh, man, we got all that in a hurry. Going to quit just a nick of time. But it turns out ours were doing it right. But they weren't flashing them right. There were people taking shortcuts. And you get these people building homes, and these, without saying too many names of these companies around here, they're putting a home so fast, nobody's watching them. And it looks great. And then, there's later, even last year, there's a home that's out in Muskego, right? 6 years old, right? Completely disintegrated. The whole chimney is just completely disintegrated, right? There's another one that was 7 years old that had, lick and stick stones, which is also done by the stucco trade. And they're just, the whole substrate and everything is just disintegrated. The only thing that's holding it is the cement and the stucco on the outside. It just trapped moisture in. They're not flashing them right. There's people are taking shortcuts, and that's the problem. So, and I try to give stucco a better name because the old days, the way you did stucco is it breathed and it leaked, and they had cracks in them, and they got air, they dried out, and everybody was fine. But now EFS made it so tight, it traps some moisture in. There's no way for the moisture to go. So if it leaks just a little bit,
sure,
it goes inside. There's no way for the moisture to go back out, and that's where you get all the mold problems. And that's what the big lawsuits, they actually started. It started in North Carolina is where the lawsuit started, and then it made national news. And the whole subdivision were like, they were just trapping moisture in. So it changed the way, then they had to all the EFS companies had to re-change all their stuff and get their act together. Otherwise, they're out of business because you couldn't do it the way we were doing it. We were actually trained to do it wrong because I know how we were trained. I was trained in the late 70s, early 80s. We're like trained to do it this way, right? If you're caught doing that now, I don't know if you go to stucco jail or something. I don't know what the penalty is.
Right.
But we were doing it in such a way that if water ever got behind the foam, it would get stuck. Now you make a drainage system where it comes out the bottom if water ever gets behind there. So and that's what I do. We use different things. We used to put up drywall on the outside of a house and then glue it to the outside of the house. Right? And think that was a great system. We thought it was a good idea.
That's a good idea.
Right? What a good idea that was. So after that turned out to be a disaster, now then you say, okay, we'll use particle board because that's cheaper. Okay, well, that disintegrates as bad as drywall does.
Mm-hmm.
So now they make it so water gets behind there. There's some gold. Stowe has a really good product called Gold Coat that you put on there. Other companies have good products too. They put them in there so water gets between the two, between the foam and the substrate. It just comes out the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
There's drainage. We put holes. But that stuff gave stucco a bad name for a while.
It's funny you mentioned that water has to get, it's going to get in, it's going to get out. I was part of a survey team or a study group years ago with window and water getting around window openings, getting into that nasty word, that mold. And we was part of a group of architects that got together and worked on how do we eliminate water getting in and around these windows. And after about 6 months of coming up with all kinds of different, we'd build walls, we'd flash differently. The determination and the result was, no, we're going to let water in and we're going to tell water where to come out. It wasn't about, we thought it was about eliminating water getting into the system. And everything that we tried, no matter what, at some point, there was a failure point.
You have to, and that's one of the things I learned because I'm also an EFIS inspector. And that's one of the things that you learn is you look for is make sure they had a place for the water to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not the same as how it was when Grandpa was building where it didn't matter. There's just such air drafts.
Right. It all naturally worked itself out before.
Yeah, but like you said, windows, okay? There's another place, right? People say, your stucco's rotten. It's like this, right? So he said, okay, fine. So we chop out a window. It turns out that you skip these little 4-corner tabs on the job. So we spent 6 months chasing this around, spraying with water, checking, caulking it, checking, replastered the stucco the wall. We tried everything. And it turned out that they just didn't put the little flaps on the corners or something real simpler that the window manufacturer found out. And another one, too, is a lot of them have welded miter joints.
Mm-hmm.
And those seem to be leaking quite a bit lately. And a lot of times when we go in there looking, he said, oh, yeah, welded miter joint. No, it's not. I talked to the window guy. He said, it's not that. And that's okay. We spray with water, right, and it leaks. I said, here, I'll caulk up these 4 corners. I'm obnoxious. You'll see exactly, right, and then it doesn't leak. He says, oh, yeah, I guess I'll have to call my window guy. But that's what a lot of times what I do as a stucco guy is we have to try to prove it's not us. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes I look at jobs all the time where people say, oh, yeah, I got a stucco chimney. It's leaking like crazy. Right, and I'll go up there and I'll fly around my drone. I'm taking pictures. I'm looking at them and saying, yeah, but what about this? Look at this hole. So no, my roofer said it has nothing to do with it. What? I can see it perfectly. And the people just say things to get out of stuff.
Yeah, and I found that out over the years with it always seems like it's somebody else's problem. It's like, oh, well, it can't be this and it can't be that. And I really do appreciate that you take the time to look at this and go, hey, you know what? It might be a stucco, but more than likely you've seen the scenarios. I have heard this recently about the welded joints, just because, again, the factories aren't as precise or they don't have the quality control team that they used to have, or during install or shipping. A lot of times it could have left the factory just fine. It got rustled about going in, cracked the joint, and it's not always what seems obvious. We've talked to other people on the show, and we talk about just because you see something there in the ceiling and it's leaking don't all of a sudden assume it's not a hole in the wall or a hole in the roof or something else. It can come from lots of different places.
I know. We had one that I said, well, fine, let's take the boards off. Let's try to figure this out because it's not the flashing. He's got pictures. He's got 2 layers of weather barriers all on there, right? Mm-hmm. We pull it off. It turns out when the guy put the siding on, we put the hardy board or whatever the board he put on the outside of it. Yeah. They put that board on, and what happened was he trapped a nail into the board, and it cut the membrane. And that was it. It's something as simple as that. The guys just, they're in a big hurry to get going, didn't bother taking a nail out, just left it there, and it made a hole. And then that leak came in. By the time they got done, it was like $20,000 for us because we had to tear the whole wall down because it was just completely rotted out.
Oh,
start over.
Well, and I would imagine, too, a lot of times we don't see those things for years. I mean, like what you're saying, there's no damage to stucco product. I mean, it's going to hold up for 100 years. So really, when something like that happens, and it happens not because of the system, it happens behind it, you won't.
This was old-fashioned stucco. They got the stones, the cultured stones, right? Absolutely looks perfectly fine on the inside, but the lady said you could smell something on the inside. So they like this. So they said, oh, it's your weight room in the basement. So they disinfected that. They said, oh, it's something else. You got your dryer vents clogged. And then, eventually it got to the point where the mold guy says, let me call a guy that knows what he's doing. So he called me in there, and I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, this stuff doesn't leak unless you have a hole. It has to have a hole, because if you have a solid rubber membrane on this whole thing, it has to leak unless there's a hole. So we played around with it, played water and did like this. Eventually I said, let's just take the piece of wood off. So we took the piece of the wood off, and there it was. Right there's a hole. And just that little tiny hole caused all that damage, because it was just all these years of rot in it, because it came down the wall. They didn't have proper flashing like they should have. They didn't do the thing. And another thing is, remember with EFIS, the biggest problem they have EFIS is they don't leave that half-inch control joint around the edges of windows. And that's where, when I usually go look at EFIS inspection, that's where I usually find a problem. They just like stuck it right to it and leave it. Same with that house too. That house did the same thing. They did a lick and stick stones. That's what I nickname for them. And they put it right next to the window frame. And then as soon as cement dries, because with cement is shrinking from the day you put it on, and forever. For that point in time, it's the biggest it's ever going to be. It's always shrinking,
Really?
shrinking. That's why you have control joints on concrete every 5 feet or whatever, 10 feet, because it's always shrinking. So you're controlling the cracks. That's why we control joints. There are cracks there. But cement's always shrinking. So what happens when you see a guy cement a window right up to the edge of the window, right? There'll be a crack there that you'll be able to stick a piece of paper in there in a couple of weeks, and be able to stick like a putty knife in there in a year, because the cement's always shrinking. And people, and a lot of EFIS, those EFIS failures always is they don't put their proper rope and caulk and seal up those joints. And the water gets behind there, and it's always on some, not a very expensive particle board, so it doesn't take long before it goes.
Well, and you don't find out till much later in time. I think that's the sad part.
When people call me, it's because, the problem is visible.
Mm-hmm.
When the problem's visible, that means the internal is just a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, I always I do a lot. We talk about basements. People want to finish a basement, so they're always like, "Hey, I'm just so worried about water. I'm worried about water, and I'm not sure I want to put a drywall up." And I'm always like, "Well, why is that?" Well, because the drywall's going to have a problem with mold, and I'm like, well, the thing about it is that I want to be able to see the problem as soon as it happens, not years down the road. So when you start, they want to caulk everything, and they want to put plastic up, and I'm like, no, these are all the things that hide behind the problem. What I want to see is, as soon as if for some reason that basement wall leaks, I want to see it the same day. I don't want to see it 5-6 years down the road, because you're going to end up with a bigger problem.
Yeah. There's a lot of home inspectors they'll call us to open up basement walls, and then we always got to argue who's going to pay for it, guys selling or buying it. But we'll open up basement walls here and there. The problem that people do in a basement wall, especially you do-it-yourselfers, you guys, you have to leave that 1/8-inch cap in the bottom, and make sure air can come out the top, because if you breathe, they'll last. But if you they put it down, then you put the floor on top of it, you seat it all in. Any water, any moisture, condensation, anything gets back there, where's it going to go? It just starts feeding. Mm-hmm. Once that drywall gets wet, that becomes food for mold.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's a major mistake. And a lot of times, and I know the code's been back and forth with installation too. I know I get a lot of questions on, what do I insulate? Do I not insulate those basement walls? But man, insulation.
I'll tell you what happens. I saw a person, you put 2 layers of Dow insulation all around his whole basement and the interior. Guess what happened? The wall blew up. It blew up because the wall got so cold that it froze right out. It blew up into this.
Really?
Like this.
No
kidding.
He
goes, it shouldn't have blown up. I just had it completely insulated. And we're like, man, when you have the heat there, it was fine, right? That's why you have it goes down a certain depth or a low depth. But when you put insulation there, the frost line changed.
Interesting. No kidding.
Yeah, so
it blew up.
Yeah.
And that was putting rigid around the whole thing, or
yeah,
just
but 2 layers, because I'll make it nice and warm. Put 2 layers of insulation in there. But now that brick.
No. And I think it goes to say that it's one of those things. Seek a professional, talk it through with them before you start. But then again, you run into the professionals too. I mean, I think it's interesting, and I think you've probably seen it the most. I mean, building science over the last 10 years. I mean, now they're testing things. They're at a more rapid rate that we can see science working, as opposed to back in the day it was test and fail, right? And it was like, well, we'll give this a shot and we'll come back to it in 10 years and see if it's still there. Now we're at least getting some more data, good or bad, I would imagine.
Yeah, when EFIS came out, because when I tell people I used to glue, motels, we used to glue foam to drywall, right? I mean, we should just glue it to drywall. And it's okay, and it stuck right outside because it was waterproof, right? Drywall will never get wet. All right, we didn't know. And at the time, we wanted to believe it because it's so easy. Anybody could do it. I could hire guys for like $4 an hour to do this. It was so easy to do. And we thought how great, and so we wanted to believe that it would work. But things work as, time tested. When I say, people say, well, I can do your house in conventional, we don't do EFIS. I say, oh, thank God. I didn't know anybody could do it in conventional anymore. Because they know that they'll never have to worry about it. Well, if we stucco it, they just don't worry about it. People always like, what kind of guarantee? I says, well, as long as my kid's alive, because once he's gone, I don't know who's going to guarantee it. I did.
Sure.
I had some roofers were working on a house over in by the County Stadium, and the house that we restuccoed in 1993. They called me up, and the roof, part of the roofer says, oh, we knocked a chunk off like this. And he goes, oh, it's under warranty. So he calls me up, and it's under warranty. I said, that's my dad's. Ain't my warranty. He said, you take care of it. I said, all right. So I did. I went and took care of it.
No kidding.
But we've had, callbacks aren't really a thing. Really a thing for us,
Yeah, I would think it's be more damage, like somebody does something, runs into the corner, does something that you're probably fixing.
Yeah, usually when I get a call from some customer, like, yeah, okay, I ran through the garage again, something like that.
Sure.
I said, oh yeah, okay, we can fix that up. I have out in Brookfield with our mentioned on a motel or something like this. There's an overhead canopy. Every year I fix it. Someone just keeps driving into it. You never had to pay for it because it's always on camera. Then who did it? Some different insurance companies. And sometimes some people are like, here's the check right away, go. Some insurance companies, oh, I don't know. Are you sure it's going to take this long and that? And I said, man, this guy wants his motel back to the way it was. Not
right away.
He doesn't want a Band-Aid on there. He doesn't paint some plywood and call it a day. He wants it back, and they always hit the clearance sign, which is the weird part.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
It's the warning piece, right? And that's what they hit.
That's what he said. We just decided it just happened again out there, and that's the first. I took a picture of it. My son goes, "Hey, look, didn't wipe out the clearance sign this time. We missed it." And that's because it came from the other direction.
Oh, I got it. I see.
So you didn't see it.
So what else would Bingo? We're coming near the end of our time together here. Is there anything else that we want to touch base on today?
One thing about plaster and stucco is if you get an insurance job, I'll fight with you to keep your house back in plaster. Insurance companies, first thing to do is they're like, see a ceiling come down, and so I'll just throw some drywall up there because it's half the price or even less to fix it. Insurance companies will repair it back to the original plaster. So you already passed your $1,000. I always tell them you already passed your $1,000 deductible, whatever it is. They're going to fix it. They'll just fix it. If you want to, I'll just tell them to call me and we'll straighten it out. But they try to talk you out of it, and don't take it personal. I always tell people, don't take it personal like you act like you're the first time that you've ever had to deal with this. No, their job, insurance companies' jobs, is to pay the least amount they have to, but they will pay you. They will pay you.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question, because I think people, or not a statement, not a question, is that insurance companies, they aren't. I've dealt with a lot of them over the years. They are not. Again, they're there to not spend as much money or keep as much money in their pockets as they can, but they're also pretty reasonable. At the end of the day, it's getting contractors that want to work for the owner, and I think owners trying to take, I'll just take the money and I'll find someone. I always say, hey, before you just take the money, let's get the right team together. But I think that's important to say about the plaster, because I think you've brought up some really good points today about the fact that, it's a superior product. So why, if you have damage done, why not get back to the superior product that you had? Otherwise, you're kind of putting not an inferior product in, but you're definitely not putting in the same standard that was there. And I think there's more people that are out there doing drywall, and so you just inherently go, well, I guess it's got to be replaced with drywall.
Oh, I see it. We see it all the time. Break ceilings, Lake Drive, whatever. They come in there and stick up some 1/4 inch or 3/8 drywall. They pack over it, and then it's okay. We're done. We're good. And so, we couldn't find a plaster. Insurance companies say, well, there's nobody can do it. I'm just saying, on this radio broadcast, yes, there's people that can do it. If you want a plaster, I can help you stay plastered. If you don't want plaster, that's fine. But I'm just saying, if you want to keep it plastered, or you'll have something happen, or we'll get a house will burn down, and then they'll say, well, they want me to drywall it, but you had a plaster home. Well, okay, I didn't know that. They didn't know that they could do plaster.
And I think that's the key to this whole broadcast today, is that I'm even more enlightened. Every time I sit down and talk with you, it's amazing, because I think that I even thought, I guess, even as a general contractor, designer, I thought it was kind of an outdated or old system that most people weren't fixing. And from what I've learned from you is it's no, if you've got it, keep it and stay with it. It's worth every penny.
Yeah, we do like somebody will be even a drywall home. You ever see people like take wallpaper off? They get their wall just looks like a mess.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what do I do? I put a layer. I said, no, I can actually skim coat it and give it a plaster wall. They're like, really? How soon can you start? Because they didn't even know that they had that option.
Yeah.
They just thought, oh man, I got to buy all new walls, get drywallers, put some sheets up, do some stuff. And no, we just zip right over them.
No kidding. All right. What fascinating. So some key points to today's podcast. Hey, stucco is exterior, plaster is interior. That's my number one takeaway for all of you out there, because I know everybody out there has heard those words before and gone, I don't get the difference. Now we know that. We also know that when it comes to mold, and keeping it dry and not going right to mold, plaster is completely on a higher level than drywall is ever going to be.
It doesn't contain the paper that you need to feed mold.
To feed mold, for sure. And that it's still available today. I think one of the neatest things about this podcast today is letting people out there know that if you're in a plaster home, first of all, stay with it. And secondly, it can be repaired. And you've got some really neat, even some how to check out what's going on in the roof. I'll have to have you back on the show, and you can talk actually more extensively about, you mentioned the word drone. And if you'd like to learn more about that, make sure that you give Creative Construction a call, because Bingo's got kind of an interesting way. He's learned over the years that maybe not getting on the roof is the best idea for him. And he's got a very unique way to do some exploratory work.
Oh yeah, I send the pictures right to their phone, and what I do is then I send them to their computer, and they can show their friends or relatives. Like we do with roofers, right? Some roofer will be saying, no, that's not true. I had a roofer say, it's some tuck pointing. You got to do some tuck pointing over there. So I took my drone up there, and I went up on the roof, and I showed him what a broken slate was. It was like a regular slate roof. And he said, well, I didn't know that. My guy said it wasn't leaking. And he said, but the drone is right there. There's a camera on there you won't believe, and you can zoom right in and how perfect it looks.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have to get that on a live segment where we can see some of the drone footage. It's actually really neat. And as far as I know, he's one of the only guys in the area doing that for his particular trade. So make sure that you check out Creative Construction of Wisconsin. I want to thank you, Bingo, for your time today, and we look forward to having you back on the show pretty soon.
I know. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.